Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. Hope y'all doing okay. So, one of the things that I don't understand is why certain people politically feel highly compelled to tell other people how to live by verdict of the law. So, what I mean by that is like using this as an example. And I realize this isn't so much a how to live, but there's other aspects. Okay, so there's a ton of people that are currently objecting to critical race theory in the school. And that is a way to view racism, racial disparity, and things of that nature. Now, I think that there is racism in certain places. I don't think that there's such a thing as institutional racism because the law says that you can't have that. And if someone found a place where we don't serve blacks, Mexicans, you can pick your nationality or ethnicity of people, or we serve them different, there would be a lawsuit with huge settlements so fast it would make everyone's head spin. So that's kind of where I come down on that. But that said, there are racists within various systems. Well, parents have objected to this being taught to their kids, and people are like, no, you must learn it. I've never understood when you go to work as a kid, the only thing that any prospective employer is really going to care about is your ability to show up on time, do a job, not cause trouble or cost them money, and kind of move on down the road from there. So I don't understand why there's a lot of potentially harmful things taught to kids, and why there's so many people that are gung-ho that this must be learned and taught and practiced, when there's such a huge amount of people objecting to it. And it's, as I said, ruling by, changing the way people live by law. Now, I will say there's a ton of society at large. If I was placed in a position of, I don't know what you'd call it, but supreme morality teacher, I guess, there are ways that I would suggest that people live their lives differently. But I don't think that should come from the government, either by decree or with consequences for disobeying the government for not living up to the standards that I set. Once you have a society where everybody understands that you can't kill or harm another person unless they are an imminent threat to you or your family, or that you can't steal from other people, and just a general code of conduct went out in society, I do think that people should kind of be left alone. Granted, there's always room for people to improve themselves, but I don't think that those improvements should come by government decree, because a lot of the one thing that government has proven to be really good at is ignoring the potential side effects for whatever they're about to do. And I'm not saying that's out of anything evil or malicious, or that there's, a diabolical plot behind all that. I just think that when you have a bunch of people that are loyal to a given party, Democrat or Republican, that, hey, we've got this bill that's set up that we want to get passed. Well, what are the second order consequences of it, or the side effects of it? We got to get the bill passed. It don't matter. I think that happens far too often. And I wish that aside from the base level of instituting laws and policies that keep people from hurting and harming other people, I think government should kind of try to stay out of day-to-day lives, and that people should try to stay out of the day-to-day lives of people that they don't know. As an example, I have talked to people that I know or am forced in the close proximity to, either via church, friends, or coworkers, and I'm like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, or I wouldn't act that way if I were you, or I wouldn't put up with that if I were you, or whatever the case may be. Basically showing them my thoughts and feelings on an issue morally, and then, they're free to make whatever decision they want. Most times they don't listen to me, and in these circumstances I might be wrong. I'll give you a great example of this. A coworker of mine, I've worked with the guy for about 5 years now. During the 2016 election cycle, him and his wife, we'll just say, differ politically. Spouse came up and said, "You vote for the other person in the general, and I'm divorcing." Things I would never, ever tolerate. And my spouse and I have disagreements on stuff. But you don't get to threaten our marriage just because I disagree with you politically on things. And so I told him, I'm like, my wife said that to me, I would have drafted up signed papers and said, go ahead and sign it. And just called her bluff and say, you will never threaten our marriage just because I have a difference of political opinion from you. I'm allowed to do that. And you're allowed to do that. But if this is what you want, you go right ahead. He didn't do that, and they're still married. And I wouldn't have done it as a point of actually following through. I would have done it as a, look, I don't care if you're joking around or not. That's serious business. You don't do that. And, there are other times, where I've talked to people kind of using my moral compass and giving them advice, and whether it's good or not, I don't know. But it's, the way that I choose to see the world, the way that I choose to view morality, the way that I was taught to view morality, I give them a hand as I can. But I've never, in broad strokes, I've never been a fan of telling people that I don't know and I'm not in their life in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to tell them how to live. The only exception to that rule, for me, is the abortion argument. I think that when you have a woman that is pregnant via rape or incest, you can go ahead and allow an abortion to happen. I don't necessarily think that it should happen all the time. I think that the rapist's estate should be liquidated and use the funds to help pay for any lost wages, any lost time off work, all the doctor visits and whatnot that a woman goes through when she's pregnant, and if at the end of the pregnancy she decides she doesn't want the kid, adoption is very easy to take care of. That's my opinion. I've been wrong. But if she chooses, you know what, I'm very young, I'm not ready to be pregnant, I have a medical condition, I don't want to carry around a 9-month reminder of the trauma that I went through, go ahead. Rape and incest account for approximately 1.5% of abortions. There's another fairly small percentage of abortions that are the mother's health and well-being and potentially life. I'll give you an example of this one. When my wife was pregnant with our youngest, she's had a heart condition, and it progressively got a little worse while she was pregnant, to the point where she couldn't walk the 30 feet out to the bus stop and back to get the kids on and off the bus without being winded. It got pretty bad. Doctors gave her medication, got her through, but in that instance, if the mother couldn't survive the pregnancy, begrudgingly, I'm okay with it. And if all that accounts for 10% of abortions, what are the other 90% coming from? I think the adoption system needs to be streamlined a little bit and made easier and cheaper for parents that would either rather adopt or that are having fertility issues. But I don't think that just killing babies unborn because it's a bad time for me to be pregnant is a viable option. I'll tell y'all a story here real quick and then I'm done. So when my wife and I got married, we had kind of decided that what we were going to do as a couple is kind of try to basically time her fertility cycle on when we wouldn't use protective measures, because we wanted to space the kids out a little further. For those of you that don't know, my wife had kids from a previous marriage. The father is not involved at all, and I ended up a few years later adopting the kids, but we wanted to kind of space them out a little further, let the current youngest kid get a little older, and then move on and have another kid. Well, my wife's terrible at math, and so she messed up her fertility cycle by a lot, and turns out that we ended up pregnant day 3 of being married, after counting it back from a missed period and all that. She was not working, was a stay-at-home mom. I was working a crappy job with crappy pay, a good job with crappy pay. And I was so broke I couldn't pay attention. Financially, it was the absolute worst time for us to get pregnant. But we did. And she carried the baby full term. As I said, she had that heart condition. Well, we made it work. And my youngest daughter will be turning 7 in a few months. So just I don't get the abortion for convenience thing. There's so many more convenient ways to have birth control outside of that. And I get some of them are, birth control failures, but when you have sex, pregnancy is always a possibility unless you are just sterilized permanently. So that's what I got to say, folks. I wish we could just leave each other alone and not try to control others' lives from on high with the government. Thanks for tuning in. Catch y'all next time.